So we're going to take this turn because yesterday it was a really, really big day. It marked the very first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The Globe and Mail is reporting that provincial governments are being called on to make it, that means all provincial governments are being called on to make it a statutory holiday so that all Canadians can properly reflect on the painful legacy of residential schools. So we know it was only a handful, Candy, that observed this as a holiday yesterday. Not all. Should this be across the board a statutory holiday?
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings on that. First of all, I want to acknowledge that today is October 1st, which is actually Treaty Day in Mi'kmaq. So in the entire Atlantic provinces, everybody's celebrating the peace and friendship treaties. We come together and we reiterate our wish to live here together on this land in peace and friendship. So to all my ill news, happy Treaty Day. I don't think it should necessarily be a statutory holiday if people aren't going to take the time to actually turn their mind to peace and reconciliation. I think it should be a day where all the programming in school is specific to it. In your workplace, something should happen specific to it. But I would hate to see it as a day when people just go, hey, I can take a long weekend and go to the cottage and forget about it.
Ryan, do you agree?
Yeah, it's one of those conflicting things. I mean, certainly we want to commemorate the day, and we want to forever remember those that went to residential schools and still battle with those demons, and also remember those that didn't come home. And it's really important that we find the time and the space in all industries, private sector, the public sector, in schools, in our communities writ large, to continue to have this conversation. And like Candy says, as long as this isn't a day where you just get to extend a long weekend, I'm okay with it. Though I am still accepting offers to white people's summer homes. If I get to use their summer homes on this day to enjoy the land their ancestors stole from ours, give me that day.
Listen,
from now until eternity.
Invite him, because people were fracking in Atlantic Canada, and we did a big fundraiser to support the Warriors. This man, Ryan McMahon, out of pocket, bought a plane ticket, flew from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast, performed comedy and back all on his own dime just to support the Warriors that were on the line. So somebody invite this man to your cottage this minute.
Wow.
And I can cook. So, I mean,
and you can cook.
If I end up at your cottage, I'll cook you a good meal. Yeah.
Perfect.
What do you think, Riaz?
Well, you know, I love what you guys are saying, and I'm actually in favor of getting this stat holiday all across the country because I see it as such an opportunity. What happened yesterday was a great starting point, and that stat holiday is an opportunity to disrupt routine and create space to do exactly what we're hearing of the listening piece. You know, I spent a portion of yesterday listening to a lot of the survivor stories to understand, you know, growing up in school, these things weren't addressed. And for me, I felt embarrassed thinking, why have I not heard about this up until now, and especially this past year with the stories? And I think yesterday, especially if we put a mark on that there's a stat holiday, it almost opens up a sense of permission, because sometimes when there are difficult conversations, we could kind of shy away thinking, is this going to trigger somebody if I'm bringing it up? But now you have a day dedicated to this conversation. So do the lead up in schools, have these ceremonies, have these things, and emphasize this is a day to lean in and listen if you're an outsider such as myself, to understand and create a cathartic space for someone to share something that represents trauma, but also represents important healing.
Yeah, I actually agree with all of you, except I'm going to take the flip side. Here's why I think it shouldn't be a statutory holiday, but it's for a very different reason, because I actually agree with what you're all saying. My daughter's 7. As you mentioned, Riaz, I never learned about this in school, but it was a very similar debate when for a while people were saying, should Remembrance Day be a statutory holiday or should it be in school? And what at least I remember growing up was that at least on that day, we were learning about veterans and wars and et cetera. I don't know how many parents feel like they've got the skills and the information if the kids are going to stay home to actually educate their kids. Whereas I could see a world where you give the teachers the lesson plans, and teachers are amazing people. It's their job. And I could definitely argue that keeping kids at home, I would say let Indigenous kids stay home. I would say let them stay home. But I do actually think that for other kids, settlers' kids, I think there's so much value that if you actually say the entire day is dedicated to reading the stories, when COVID's over, bringing speakers in, like, let's do this the right way so that the kids are actually getting it. Because I don't think that you should let the very system that did this to children off the hook.
Yeah.
I actually don't think you should get them off the hook.
I think this is where we can point to some of the success of the reconciliation industry that is currently being built in Canada. And it is an industry, and some of it's disgusting and some of it's helpful. Where much of this work is currently landing is in the education system. And I'm conflicted about this as well. Like, we are handing off the horrors of the past to our children. And I think that part of that is really difficult to square for me. And I am conflicted about it as a father of two young girls. But what I will say is, if we have Bring Your Kid to Work Day, why don't we have a Bring Your Parent to School Day? And have them come in and share that space, because it is children that are picking up this work. And what I worry about, what I fear, is that they go into school, they pick up some of these heavy stories, and they don't know how to process them. And then they come home to parents that don't have the information. And perhaps you could imagine in a scenario that information gets swept under the rug because mom and dad and drunk Uncle Larry don't understand the information. Perhaps they're lucky and they end up in a household that is more supportive, and they end up having that conversation at the dinner table. What is clear is, yesterday I zoomed into a handful of classrooms across Canada and had this conversation with kids. They get it, they're empathetic, they're compassionate, and they're digging in. And to quote Drake, which I often do, what a time to be alive. How's that for an out of touch chubby dad of two teenage girls?
Okay,
Quoting Drake on national TV.